Many people struggle with communication. They're either shy or just want to say something, but for them, it might sound stupid. You want to keep a good talk with the person in opposite, but you don't know how. In that case, in this video, you'll learn a few lessons from the book that even Warren Buffett used to master his communication skills. With over 30 million copies sold worldwide, this is one of the best-selling books of all time, and rightfully so. There are many lessons throughout the book, but in the meantime, hit that subscribe button and get ready for our top picks that'll help you win friends. Principle number 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. On May 7th, 1931, the most sensational manhunt New York City's ever seen had come to its climax. After 2 weeks of search, they finally found Two-Gun Crowley, considered the most dangerous criminal New York had ever seen so far, in his sweetheart's apartment. But how did Crowley regard himself? Well, they found out. He wrote a letter whilst they fired into his apartment. It said, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." Not long after an officer came in, Crowley shot him, then stood over the already dead body and shot him again. Al Capone said, "I spent the best years of my life giving the people the lighter pleasures, helping them have a good time, and all I get is abuse, the existence of a hunted man." He was public enemy number 1 in the USA. Capone, however, didn't condemn himself. He regarded himself as an underappreciated and misunderstood public benefactor. Few criminals regard themselves as bad men. They're just as human as you and I. Most people rationalize and explain their faults and weaknesses. They tell you why they had to crack the safe or pull the trigger. Most of them attempt by a form of reasoning, fallacious or illogical, to justify their antisocial acts to themselves, consequently stoutly maintaining that they should have never been imprisoned at all. All the big criminals don't blame themselves for anything. But what about the other people you and I come into contact with on a daily basis? Criticism is futile. They've already rationalized their poor behavior. In going against this position, it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. In a sense, criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. In essence, one might say that criticisms are like messenger pigeons. They always return home. Principle number 2. Give honest and sincere appreciations. There's only one way under high heaven to get anyone to do anything, and that's by making the other person want to do it. William James said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. It is a universal urge in human nature, the desire to be important. The desire makes you want to hear the latest styles, drive the latest cars, and talk about your brilliant children. Imagine what miracle you and I can achieve by giving people an honest appreciation and feelings of importance." Charles Schwab was, at the time of writing, one of the most successful people on the planet. He was paid $1 million a year to run his steel business. Schwab told a secret to his success, something that will be hung in every home and every school, every shop and office in the land. Words that children ought to memorize, the words that will transform your life and mine if we live by them. I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people the greatest asset I possess, and the way to develop the best that is in that person is by appreciation and encouragement. We nourish the bodies of children and friends and employees, but how seldom do we nourish their self-esteem? We give them roast potatoes and beef for energy, but we often neglect to give the kind words and appreciation they need. Flattery versus appreciation. Flattery seldom works with discerning people. It is shallow, selfish, and insincere. The difference between is, one is sincere and one is insincere. One comes from the heart, the other just comes out of the mouth. One is universally admired and the other is universally condemned. But how do we find something in them that we can appreciate? When we are not preoccupied or thinking about a definite problem, we usually spend 95% of time thinking about ourselves. But if we stop to think about ourselves for a little, and begin to think of the other person and find his good points, we won't need to resort to flattery so cheap and false that it can be spotted almost before it is out of the mouth. Next time you enjoyed the steak at the pub, send word to the chef. Next time a salesperson shows some extra courtesy, do mention it. Try leaving a friendly trail of little sparks of gratitude on your daily trips. Emerson said, "Every man I meet is superior in some way, and that I learn of him." Let's try and figure out another person's good points and forget flattery. Give honest, sincere appreciation. The third principle: arouse in the other person an eager want. Here I quote Dale Carnegie. "I often went fishing in Maine during the summer. Personally, I'm very fond of strawberries and cream, but I found for some reason fish prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I thought about what they wanted. I didn't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, 'Wouldn't you like to have that?' Why talk about what we want? That's childish, sometimes even absurd. But of course you're interested in what you want. You are eternally driven towards it, but often no one else is. The rest of us are just like you. We're interested in what we want. So the only way to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how they can get it." Henry Ford says, "If there is any one secret to success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and to see things from that person's angle as well as your own." First, arouse in the other person an eager want, for he who can do this has the whole world with him, but he who cannot walks a lonely way. Principle 4. Become genuinely interested in other people. Did you ever stop to think that a dog is the only animal that doesn't have to work for a living? A hen has to lay eggs, a cow has to give milk, and a canary has to sing. But a dog makes a living by giving you nothing but love. You can make more friends in 2 months by being genuinely interested in other people than you can make in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. The New York Telephone Company made a detailed study of phone conversations to find out what words were the most frequently used. Interestingly, "I" was the most frequent, used 3,900 times in just 500 telephone conversations. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow man who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides greatest injuries to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. That is a quote by Alfred Adler. If we want to make friends, let's put ourselves out to do things for other people. Things that require time, energy, unselfishness, and thoughtfulness. Let's greet people with animation and enthusiasm. When someone calls, you on the phone say hello in tones that bespeak how pleased you are to have the person call you. A show of interest, with every other principle of human relations, must be sincere. It must pay off, not only for the person showing the interest, but for the person receiving the attention. It's a two-way street in a way, and both parties benefit. Quick question: how often do you remember people's names? Be honest with me in the comments. Principle 5. Smile. Action speaks louder than words, and a smile says, "I like you. You make me happy, and I'm glad to see you." That's exactly why dogs are such a hit. They're so glad to see us, they're jumping out of their skins, so naturally, we're glad to see them. Whenever you go outdoors, draw your chin in, carry your head high, greet your friends with a smile, and put soul into every hand clasp. Principle 6. Remember that a person's name to that person is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Carnegie interviewed Jim Farley, the Postmaster General of the United States, an important role back in 1934, and asked about the secret to his success. Carnegie guessed, "I understand you can recall 10,000 people by their first names." He replied, "Wrong. I can recall 50,000. Whenever he met a new acquaintance, he found out their first or complete name and some facts about their family or business. He fixed it in his mind as part of the picture, and next time he met them, he inquired about their family or the hollyhocks in the background. Half the time we're introduced to a stranger, we chat a few minutes and don't even remember his or her name by the time we say goodbye. It's something most of us are useful at, but like any skill, it's learnable. Principle 7. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Dale Carnegie was at a party and he met a lady who quickly discovered he'd traveled Europe at a great deal. She said, "Oh, Mr. Carnegie, I do want you to tell me about the wonderful places you've visited and the sights you've seen." As she sat down, she mentioned she'd returned from Africa. Carnegie then flipped the attention back to her. "Africa, how interesting. Tell me, how did you visit the big game country?" "Yes." "Ah, how fortunate. How I envy you." That kept her talking for 45 minutes. Dale didn't even get a word in for the rest of the conversation. All she wanted was an interested listener, so she could expand her ego and tell me about where she'd been. She told everyone he was the most stimulating and the most interesting conversationalist, despite using less than 20 words throughout the conversation. People are so concerned about what they're going to say next that they don't keep their ears open. Very important people prefer good listeners to good talkers, but the ability to listen seems rarer than almost any other good trait. If you want to know how to make people shun you and laugh at you behind your back, and even despise you, well, here's the recipe. Never listen to anyone for long. Talk incessantly about yourself. If you have an idea while the other person's still talking, don't wait for them to finish, but go in and interrupt their sentence. Know that a person's toothache means more to them than a famine in China, which kills 1 million people. Principle 8. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. Carnegie was in line to register a letter at the post office. The clerk appeared bored with the job. Carnegie thought, "I'm going to make him like me." He asked himself, "What's something about him I can honestly admire?" He said, "I certainly wish I had your head of hair." Someone asked Carnegie at a public lecture, "But what did you want to get out of him? If you're so contemptibly selfish that we can't radiate a little happiness and pass it on with a bit of honest appreciation without getting something in return, then we will be met with the failure that we rightly deserve." Carnegie did get something out of it, the feeling that he had done something for him without him being able to do anything in return. The unvarnished truth is that almost all the people you meet feel themselves superior to you in some way, and a sure way to their hearts is to let them realize in some subtle way that you recognize their importance, and recognize it sincerely. Well guys, that was some of the principles we learned from Dale Carnegie. Make sure that you use them wisely. Meanwhile, you can watch our video about dark psychology or how you can make a man or woman chase you. Thank you for watching, take care, and till next time.